Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Trine number 206-3 wireless entry exit signal kit. And the 206-3 is this box. This is the box. The summary of it, as you can see, it'll play 1-note, 2-note, or 8 notes, melody, chime, and field selectable. Wireless battery-operated door contact switch, and the battery's included, up to 100-foot range. Don't know what they crossed out there. I'm only looking because I'm curious. Okay. It said 120 selectable codes. That's been crossed out. This version, I can tell you, is not compatible with any pieces that are that have been sold before December of 2014. Receiver plugs into a typical 120 VAC outlet. Transmitter mounting hardware provided. Adjustable volume control. UL, CUL, which I think is ULC. FCC and IC approved. You're going to get the chime receiver, the transmitter, magnetic contact, a battery, and the mounting hardware. Okay, so that's just the summary off this. This video will go from an overview of the box, an overview of the actual components. We're going to look at the installation instructions, go through those steps, and then go into some troubleshooting that would exist. First, where do you run into this item? Anytime you walk into a business and you hear a chime or a ding-dong or a ding, or maybe a little melody that plays behind you, it's probably a Trine 206-3. You have the chime itself. This is going to plug right into an outlet. That's all you're going to do. The chime volume is settable on the back of the box. Okay, I'm going to just change it to its loudest setting because I'm going to plug this in a few feet away from the microphone. You then have your transmitter, and this is your wireless transmitter, and this would generally go on to the frame. Not necessarily, but generally you're going to find it there. It'll be somewhere on the frame. We're going to pop the back of that off in a moment. You then have your door magnet. That you will be able to pry off the back of this with a very small flat instrument. And you also have a spacer should you need to build that out. Why you might need to build that out would be because you have generally a scenario where you're going to have if the transmitter is mounted to the face of the frame and the door is inset, you might need to build that off the door a little bit for it to make proper contact with the transmitter. So that spacer is there to allow you to build that off. Let's go over some basic. Oh, and then you're going to get screws, of course, to mount the transmitter and the door magnet. Some two-sided tape, should that really help you out with maybe getting the transmitter applied, whatever the case might be. I've had people just use these to install it. I obviously don't recommend that. You could cut that in half, I suppose, to get a little more mileage out of it. Some basic dimensional properties is the next phase of this video. The chime, about 3 5/8 overall wide. Overall height, about 5 inch. Overall width of the body, that's about 1 1/4 inches. The transmitter, overall height, about 2 5/8, with a width of about 1 7/16. Body thickness, about 13/16. Your door magnet, about 1/2 inch thick, 5/8 wide, about 1 5/8 tall, 1 9/16. That spacer should be pretty close to the same, slightly bigger, about 1 5/8, about 11/16, 5/8, about 5/8 thick as well. Okay, so we've covered the physical dimensions of everything. There is a link below this video to a document that is called Installation Instructions. Very helpful to be able to review what we're looking at. Okay, now we're moving on to the installation instructions. And and of course they are included with your unit. Page 1 of that document really jumps to the troubleshooting. So let's go to page 2. We've covered over the what's included section of all of this, and installation step 1 basically says plug the chime on an electrical outlet within the range of the transmitter, which is 100 feet. Take 30 seconds for the electronics to initialize. I'm going to plug in the transformer at an outlet that's maybe about 10 feet away from where I am. Now we've got that the chime plugged in, and step 2 is to remove the back cover off the transmitter unit to find the programming switches. Let's do that. I'm going to try it with the good old fingernail first. Sorry, like watching paint dry. Okay, I'm going to skip that and get a tool. Okay, we've got that pulled off. Back cover comes off. Now, you're going to have this little strip of orange plastic that's going to isolate the battery contact so that it's not making that contact. I'm holding it sideways because, let's see if we can get the camera to stay focused. There we go. Pause that video there if you like. You've got your 2 selector switches. On 1 and 2, red background, white letters. To the right of that is what's called the test button. Then you've got, of course, the electronics down below it, which there's nothing of interest to us down below. You've got the cover removed. Okay, great. Let's move to step 3. After the chime initializes, push the test button on the transmitter for 20 seconds so the chime can pair with the transmitter. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to push and hold. We're going to leave this run. I didn't pull the plastic out. Okay. Okay, so I've got our orange insulator pulled out. I'm going to press and hold that test button. So hopefully you heard that. I pressed the test. It started immediately. Note, number 3, after the chime initializes, push the test button for 20 seconds. In our case, it happened immediately, so that it can pair with the transmitter. A ding-dong sound from the chime indicates that the transmitter has been successfully mated with the chime. A single ding from the chime indicates that the transmitter memory was erased. I'm not sure what the start is to do that. In terms of how to erase the memory. We'll see if we'll discover that in a moment. Now, since we've got the cover off and we are mated to the chime, let's test the different dip switches. The dip switches have a position 1 off and 2 on. 1 off. So we're looking at the transmitter. The chime has its own dip switches as well, and it's obvious because we're getting ding only that the chime must have the position 2 in the on position as well. So when I move position 2 on my transmitter to off, there is nothing that we can achieve by doing that. So at this moment, we need to be able to effect the chime setting for switch 2. So I'm going to pause the video, pull the chime off the outlet, and I'm going to open up the back cover. So we have the chime. I pulled out the little screw that's there. I'm going to open up that case, that lid. There's our chime settings. So 2 was indeed in the on position as predicted. Let's set both the transmitter and the chime to the off position for 2. I'm going to plug it back in. I'm not going to pause the video because the outlet's right around the corner here. We're going to give that 30 seconds to initialize. Now I've got both position 2 in the off. And this chart, by the way, is on page 2 in the right-hand corner. So I'm holding the test button, and we heard the ding-dong rather than just the ding. Now, we're going to pull the chime off the outlet. We're going to set the chime. We're going to play Westminster. We're going to set both. Let's take a look here now. Westminster is shown as on in both positions to get the same effect as ding. Let's pause this video. So I called Trine on the telephone to ask why the installation instructions were unclear. And studying that document further, the dip switch setting is the same in all instances, so it's probably a typo, which means that to achieve a different, maybe a Westminster melody, that the dip switches, technical support their fields, probably put them in opposite settings. Have it in the on position of one and in the off position of the other. I'm going to leave the chime set to the off position for 2, and I'm going to plug that in. Then I'm going to flip dip 2 on the transmitter to the on or up position. So now they're in separate locations or separate positions. I'm going to plug it back in. Going to give that 30 seconds to initialize. We've got that chime plugged in. I've got the dip switches in the opposite setting. I'm going to push the test button. There's your Westminster. So all I did was put chime is in down or off, and transmitter is in on or up. The tech did say put them in opposite positions. It probably doesn't matter if they're on, off, or off, on. So there you go. We've discovered that scenario. Now back to the installation instructions. Page 2. We're at step 4 under the notes. We've got the desired chime sound set. Now mount the transmitter unit to the door frame. You're going to with your screws, use the short ones for this, I'd say. No reason to use anything super long. You got 4 short ones, and we're going to go over why in a moment. Mount that. Okay. The arrow is important. The location of the arrow. I'm going to pull the battery. I'm going to re-insulate it because this unit is now going to a client. The dip switch 1 position do not have a direct function. They just need to be in the same orientation according to the tech support. I would think that it has something to do with erasing the memory, although it's not discussed here at all. I would think that changing the position of one of the dip switches in one and hitting the test button probably clears the memory. Transmitter is mounted. The direction of that arrow is important. The direction, the arrows do not line up as shown in red letters at the top of page 2. And if you look at page 1, for swinging doors, align the transmitter arrow to the bottom of the magnet as shown. So you're going to align the door magnet such that its case is aligned with the bottom of this arrow. Okay. I can't explain why that's the case, but that's the case. Maybe they couldn't have the molding where the arrow was in a specific position. Hard to say. Note 6, align the door magnet with the transmitter. See the positioning above. The arrows do not line up. You're going to basically make an installation that looks like this. The bottom of the body to the bottom of to the transmitter arrow. Or, I suppose, the top, if you're doing it this way. Note number 7, test the completed installation. Refer to the troubleshooting section if the installation does not work. Troubleshooting, page 1. That is the next step of this video. There is a list of instances where this may not work. And let's go through them quickly. The chime does not ring. All of the A subsections under all of the 1 subsections under A basically result in replace the battery. If it doesn't work at all, if it dings only once, replace the battery in the transmitter. 3, chime is not receiving power. Obviously check the AC coming into it. A cause that they're not working as well would be as if they're not mated. You have to sync them as indicated in the initial steps. In fact, on page 2 of step 3 of installation, which I've already done. There we go. That's dip switch 1. I'm not sure why the gentleman did not know that. Retry, if it doesn't work, retry the syncing process. Unplug the chime. Ensure switch 1 on both chime and sensor is set to off. They are indeed in the down position. Wait 30 seconds. Press and hold the test button inside the sensor within 20 seconds after plugging in the chime. When a ding-dong tune is played, the sensor and the chime are both synced. Heading B, problem. Battery seems okay, but the chime does not work after installation. You could have simply interference. You could have everything mounted to a steel door and steel frame, and that steel is absorbing the transmission of the unit. You'll want to seek an installation where you don't have that sort of significant interference. You might need to physically move the chime closer to the installation of the magnet and transmitter. Concrete will do the same. Relocate the pieces together. Section C of the troubleshooting. Chime sounds when not intended. That I've experienced in the past. Chime or transmitter is receiving interference. Go through the steps in A, unsync the unit, and then resync it. If the problem persists, move the chime or transmitter to another location to reduce interference from something. It's wireless. Interference can come from a variety of radio sources, cell phones, garage openers, cordless phones. I'm not sure what else could cause the interference that you might encounter, but those sorts of sources could do it. That covers everything on the Trine 206-3 chime unit. They're literally ubiquitous. You see them all over, as I'd mentioned earlier. There is below this video, finally, a link to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Trine products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Trine 206-3 wireless entry exit signal kit or any other Trine product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.